is now 17 years old. That was a long time ago. So I want to just briefly go through some of the highlights of the budget. I'll try to be quick. And then you want to get to the public hearing portion. So I'll just give you my spiel. There are a lot of communities that would love to be in our position today. We've got a lot on the horizon and a lot to deal with, but we've done a lot to get ready, and I'm really proud of what we've done. We've closed the gap on a lot of our facilities. We have a few more to go. We've built outstanding relationships with our community and our community partners. We've built our workforce. We have an excellent group of employees with our Leadership Academy and bringing employees to market pay. And we've also done a great job, I think, with the schools. Every time I turn around, our schools are winning some award and being recognized for their good work. So our budget continues to support those efforts. Just the budget at a glance. So, of course, the big news is there is, for the first time in 6 years, a very small tax increase being proposed of 1.19 cents. And that is dedicated to fund the additional transfer needed to the debt reserve for the capital projects that you approved in the fall when you adopted the CIP. We're just under $10 billion in property valuation, just under $1 million in what a penny generates. And we're now over $100 million in budget, 107 and change in the general fund. So, of course, the budget still has a ways to go before adoption. We have 2 public hearings tonight and tomorrow night. You have 3 work sessions scheduled. So we have tried to cram everything into May 19th and 20th. Lisa's done a great job setting the schedule for that. So hopefully we finish on the 20th in terms of the work session, but if we don't, then we have a day in reserve June 2nd. So if anything comes up that we need to follow up on, we can do that on the 2nd. So the board will review that, make changes, and then the goal, of course, is to have a budget adopted by June 30th, and we would like to bring you the ordinance on June 20th. I'll just briefly mention your vision and goals that were adopted and tweaked somewhat from last year at the retreat. We envision Chatham County as a thriving community of healthy people living in a safe environment that provides opportunities for prosperity for all. And that is a mouthful, and that is what framed our budget. So your first goal is to demonstrate sound fiscal stewardship and economic support to ensure we can meet the important needs of our residents, to ensure effective, efficient government that is responsive to the needs and input of all residents, to be proactive in protecting our natural resources and promoting responsible growth and land use while recognizing the differing needs and factors across the county, and to support our pre-K through 12 and the community college in providing a quality education for all students. And you will see in the budget document that repeatedly departments link to these goals as they develop their budgets, and we emphasize that. We think overall the budget absolutely supports these goals. So some revenue highlights. We do continue to see really good revenue growth, motor vehicles and sales tax in particular. I almost don't know what to do with sales tax, but it looks like, I don't know if you got my email from last week, it looks like the state's trying to take it. So we hope. Deborah worked furiously at the end of the week. We've been talking to Siler City because the state is talking about basing one part of the sales tax on tier status, which very unfairly impacts Siler City. I recognize the county as a whole is a tier 3 county. We thought they were doing away with the tiers, and here comes this bill to base sales tax on tiers. So we hope that that's not the case. That would cause us to lose 12% of our Article 40 sales tax, which is very serious. That's the bad news. The good news is many of our indicators are trending favorably. Some are at or near pre-recession levels. In fact, sales tax is above pre-recession levels. So first is unemployment. Our unemployment unemployment rate tends to be lower than the state and the nation. And in fact, this chart shows through February, but in March, our rate had dropped to 4.4%, which was the second lowest in the state. And this is, of course, coupled with the really good news that Mount Air plans to add over 500 more jobs in Siler City. Our deed stamps and building permits are early indicators of your growth in your tax base, and so you can see our deed stamps, we project not quite to reach pre-recession levels, but we're getting close. And as I said, our sales tax, so Article 39 is the only part of the sales tax that I can really trend anymore, and that part is collected locally, and as you can see, we are above pre-recession levels in locally collected sales tax. Very good news. And we tend to, we have in the last couple of years outperformed the state substantially in locally collected sales tax. So we did have some additional obligations in fiscal 17 that we had to account for. I will say that the additional debt service and the operating costs for the Ag Center and the bus garage were modeled out and planned for. We knew they were coming. We had a plan to deal with them. They did impact the budget by over $1 million. Of course, the debt service for the Ag Center and the bus garage, we also have a transfer in of revenue to cover that from the debt reserve. But because of the new projects that were approved in the CIP in the fall, that being the Health Sciences building and the new elementary school, and then the subsequent action to expand the capacity of the high school, we needed additional revenues dedicated to the debt reserve. And so that is almost $3.4 million. We also had a substantial increase in health insurance costs. Our HR director and our personnel committee continues to review health insurance benefits and make recommendations and changes in the plan and so forth. We just had a very bad year in 16. We continue our good support, steadfast support of the Chatham County school system. The recommended budget fully supports their request. $849,000 will add 3 additional reading teachers. I think it's 5 teachers to deal with growth and configuration needs in our small K-8 schools, and also teaching assistants for testing. We recommend an additional $383,000 in capital outlay funds. Over time, technology needs have consumed more and more of the capital outlay budget, and this is to restore some building maintenance funds. And then finally, we've set aside $300,000 for potential state salary increases. I will say that is a 3% increase. So I've heard as high as 5 for teachers and 4 statewide. The budget significantly meets your goal for affordable housing. So in the current year budget, you funded the comprehensive plan, and we have an excellent housing consultant as part of that plan. So we were working to develop a long-term strategy for affordable housing. But in the meantime, we are taking some other steps to address needs. So first is to fund a contract with Triangle J for staffing and recommendations on housing work, working with the towns, and it was the town's idea to contract with Triangle J. Second is to fund pre-development work for Henry Siler School to develop as low-income senior affordable housing. Next is to fund Council on Aging's efforts to address substandard housing. You saw the good work that the intern is doing this afternoon, and so we hope to build on that and also to provide some funding to address substandard housing. And then we are also just announced today a collaborative grant, the recipient of the collaborative grant with Triangle J and United Way. We also included things in the budget to address efficiency and effectiveness, and a lot of those are technology. We're recommending a 3% increase in employee pay. We continue to compete for good employees. We live in a region where our surrounding counties pay well, and we have to, I think, stay on top of that. We are recommending several new positions. 2.5 positions in the Department of Social Services for NC FAST, 5 new detention officers, 13 were requested, and we whittled it down to 5 to begin phasing in compliance with the Federal Prison Rape Elimination Act. And we will continue to see that in years to come, I think. A new position in central permitting, which is our second largest county department without any administrative support. A part-time nutritionist position in the health department to handle increased workload, and expansion of time for the library outreach coordinator. Her services have been very well received, and we can use her more time with her. Our budget makes recommendations for nonprofit agencies. As you know, agencies undergo an extensive application and review process. 55% of the funding is earmarked for basic needs of housing, hunger, and health care, and we exceeded that percentage with the recommendation. Lisa has provided you with written recommendations from the panels, and I made minor changes from the panel recommendation, mostly to address housing. So again, our revenues continue to do well. Excluding fund balance, revenues are up 8%. 5% growth in property tax. That does include the increase in the rate. So the increase in the base is a little over 3. A 19% increase in sales tax. And before anybody gets too excited, remember that is the additional authority the additional sales tax that the state gave us this year, because we're a rural county. Unfortunately, the bill that I sent you last week would take away part of that money. So 12% would come off of Article 40, and then there's another we estimate it's about $250,000 we would lose if they rescind. They were going to put state money into the sales tax pot to help the rural counties, and they're talking about taking that money away. And then a 1% decrease in permits and fees, and that's because 15 was such a good year. So if you look at, if you compare with 14, we didn't have quite the big projects that we had in 15, we're up 15% over 14. So major highlights, the general fund is $107 million at a 7% increase. The water fund is up is $6.2 million, an 11% increase. Again, don't get too excited. A lot of that is one-time projects that are being funded. And then finally, solid waste and recycling is $3.2 million, and that is a 3% increase. So just to say a little more about the capital improvements program, which was the driver for the increase in the property tax rate. The first thing I want to say is we have been funding the high school for many, many years. Let me say it again. We have been setting aside the money for the high school for many, many years. The difference is we would like to increase the capacity of the high school to open with 1,000 students instead of 800. And that requires about $5 million that we have to make up in the debt reserve. So that is one reason for the increase. The second is the health sciences building that you approved at Briar Chapel, and then the final one is the new Northeast Elementary School I said in the Northeast. So we also are fully funding the CIP pay-go part with a fund balance appropriation. We're also appropriating fund balance from last year. Remember, we had a good year. We're appropriating about $1 million to move up the animal shelter in 1 year. And finally, we're redirecting some money from Pittsburgh Elementary roof to a mobile pod for Northwood to hold the school until we can build the new high school. So in summary, we're recommending a tax increase of 1.19 cents, the first since 2011. And as we discussed, this will be used to cover our additional transfer to the debt reserve for the new projects that were approved. 3 fire districts are requesting tax increases. Bennett and Golston are asking for 1 cent. Northview is asking for 0.3 cents. And Durham County Fire and Rescue, which is our Parkwood district, is actually asking for a decrease. They were actually able to achieve some efficiencies when they restructured. And then finally, the capital and one-time expenses are being funded by almost $6 million in fund balance. So we believe this continues our good stewardship and moves the county forward. And the last thing is just to revisit the calendar. Unless you have any questions, we can open it up for the public hearing.
When you say revisit the calendar, you mean our work sessions?
We put the calendar back up on the screen. That's what I meant. We don't want to make any changes at this point.
Okay. Well, now we'll have the public hearing. Anyone who is signed up to speak gets 3 minutes to speak to the board on any issue. At 2 minutes, a yellow light will come on to signal you have 1 minute remaining. And then when your 3 minutes have come up, you'll see a flashing red light and a beeping sound. If you're in the middle of a thought, don't panic. You can wrap up as best you can and then leave time for anyone else who may have signed up.